You're watching everyone around you talk, and you're completely fine staying quiet. People keep asking you what's wrong, but nothing's wrong. You're just watching. You're listening. You're observing. And that feels more natural than anything else. Sound familiar? If that's you, here's the truth. You're not shy. You're not antisocial. You're not broken. You're what psychologists call a quiet observer. And there's something quietly powerful about that. In a world where everyone's competing to be heard, the person who listens is the one who actually understands. And understanding? That's real power. Today, we're going to break down exactly what it means to be a quiet observer. We'll look at the psychology behind it, why smart people often choose silence, and why being the person watching from the sidelines isn't a weakness. It's a serious advantage. Let's start with something most people get completely wrong. Society tells us that being loud means being confident, that talking a lot means you know a lot, that if you're quiet, you must be insecure, or scared, or have nothing to say. But research tells a very different story. Studies in behavioral psychology consistently show that people who listen more than they talk tend to pick up on details others completely miss. They're reading the room. They're noticing micro-expressions. They're catching contradictions in what people say. While everyone else is busy talking, the quiet observer is building a mental picture of everything going on. This is what's called observational intelligence, and it's one of the most underrated cognitive skills a person can have. So, what exactly is observational intelligence? Think of it this way. Imagine you walk into a room and you start talking right away. You're focused on what you want to say, how you sound, whether people like you. But if you walk in and you just observe first, you notice who's tense, who's comfortable, who's in charge, who's pretending. You gather data before you even open your mouth. That's what quiet observers do naturally, and it gives them a huge advantage in conversations, relationships, and decision-making. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Research from Harvard Business School found that the best negotiators in the world aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones who ask the most questions and listen the longest before making a move. Think about that. The people winning the biggest deals aren't the most talkative. They're the most observant. This applies to everyday life too. At work, at parties, in relationships. The quiet person who's been watching quietly all evening, they've already figured out the dynamics of the room. They know who trusts who, who's faking a smile, what the real tension is about. And when they finally do speak, it lands. People listen, because there's weight behind it. Let's talk about the performing versus observing distinction. In today's world, especially with social media, there's a constant pressure to perform, to share every thought, to have an opinion on everything, to be seen and heard constantly. People curate personalities online. They practice how to seem interesting. They're always, in some sense, putting on a show. But the quiet observer, they opt out of the performance. And that actually makes them more authentic. When you're not busy performing, you're more present, more genuine. And people feel that, even if they can't name it. There's a psychological concept called impression management. Most people are always managing how they come across. But the quiet observer has less invested in the performance, so they can focus on what's actually happening instead. This is why quiet observers often make the best friends, the best partners, and the best leaders, not despite their quietness, but because of it. But here's what makes this even more fascinating. Research from Harvard Business School found that heart of the mystery and the art of the comfort and the art of the discipline and the art of the detail are all different facets of the quiet observer. They've spent years watching human behavior so closely that they understand people deeply. They just don't broadcast it. Now, let's get into the neuroscience for a second, because this is fascinating. Research on introverted thinking styles shows that quiet observers often have higher activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thinking, planning, and self-reflection. They process information more deeply and more thoroughly before responding. This is called depth of processing. It means quiet observers don't just hear things, they absorb them, they analyze them, they connect them to other things they know. This is why when quiet observers do share their thoughts, those thoughts tend to be unusually insightful. They've already done the work internally that other people are doing out loud. Think about the smartest, most thoughtful person you know. Chances are they're not the loudest person in the room. They're probably the one sitting quietly, listening carefully, and waiting until they have something actually worth saying. Now, I want to address the pain point directly. If you're a quiet observer, you've probably been made to feel like something is wrong with you. People ask if you're okay. They tell you to speak up. They assume you're judging them or that you don't like them. You get passed over in group settings. You get labeled as antisocial. And after a while, some quiet observers start to believe it. They start to think their natural way of being is a flaw that needs to be fixed. But let me be very clear about this. Your quietness is not a flaw, it's a feature. The challenge isn't that you need to become louder. The challenge is learning how to operate your natural strengths in a world that's built for loudness. And there's a big difference between those two things. Here's how to think about it. A quiet observer's superpower is signal detection. In a loud, noisy world, they naturally filter out the noise and pick up on the signals. The signals that tell you when someone is lying, when a situation is about to go wrong, when someone really needs help but isn't asking for it, when the group is heading in the wrong direction but nobody wants to say so. These are the signals that change outcomes. These are the signals that most people completely miss, and you catch them automatically. So, what should a quiet observer actually do with this ability? First, trust it. Stop second-guessing your observations just because you haven't said them out loud yet. Your internal analysis is valid. Your instincts, built from years of careful observation, are valuable. Second, choose your moments. Quiet observers don't need to say everything they think, but they should start sharing the insights that matter. The well-timed observation, the question that reframes the whole conversation, the perspective that nobody else considered. That's your contribution, and it's powerful. Let's close with this. In a world that rewards performance, loudness, and constant self-promotion, the quiet observer might feel out of place. But the world has always needed people who watch carefully before acting, who think deeply before speaking, who understand others not because they've talked at them, but because they've truly listened to them. The greatest strategists, the most empathetic leaders, the most insightful thinkers, they've often been quiet, not because they had nothing to say, but because they understood that silence has its own intelligence. So, the next time someone asks why you're so quiet, you can smile and know the truth. You're not watching from the sidelines. You're watching from the best seat in the house, and you see everything.